Okay. All right. Hold on. Let's go.
Where are we going?
We're going with your start. Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead and hit me. Hit me with the real start, Odie.
Hit me with your best shot.
Yes.
Okay, so in honor of the fact that in this episode, we're going to talk about the most incredible comic book movie I've ever seen in my entire life.
Fire away.
Madam Web, or in Britain, Madame Web, if you will. I wanted to ask you, I wrote down some things during that movie that stood out to me. And I wanted to ask you, I picked, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 options, and I want you to pick which one you think didn't happen in the movie.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah. All right. So multiple choice.
Multiple choice.
I'm probably going to get it wrong. Let's go.
Okay. Sorry, I had to do 7. I tried to keep it short, but there's just so much in this movie.
Whatever. Hit me with 7 things, and I'll guess which one didn't happen.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
First one. Madam Web is born in a cave in Peru with the help of magic spider people.
Okay.
Number 2. The 3 spider women never get their powers and never show up.
Okay.
Evil Spider-Man is killed by a large Pepsi sign falling on him.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Web becomes wanted for kidnapping by the NYPD.
Uh-huh.
Madam Web runs down evil Spider-Man in her car, and then again in an ambulance.
Okay.
Peter Parker is born, but not named, and Aunt May is mentioned, but never shown. And the last one, Madam Web, for some reason, splits into 3 ghost-like copies of herself near the end of the movie to save everybody.
And I have to guess which one didn't happen?
Which one of these didn't happen in the new Spider-Man movie?
I'm gonna
Madam
guess
Web?
that. I mean, this is just a hopeful guess at this point because the rest of them, I'm like, this probably happened. I'm gonna guess that evil Spider-Man, is not killed by a giant Pepsi sign. Like, definitely, right? He doesn't meet his end under a sign that we all know he can lift because he has the strength of an armored insect with an exoskeleton.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. All of those things happen.
Oh my! It was a trick question. Odie. He dies under a Pepsi sign.
Oh my god. Dude, not only does he die under a Pepsi sign, but it's also a Pepsi sign that is for some reason on top of a fireworks warehouse.
I mean, is this also in Peru?
No, it's in New York.
I was like, if you put this in another country, I guess it becomes more believable. I don't know why. Maybe that's just me being like subtly racist. But like yeah, Pepsi sign on top of a fireworks factory. Where are they? Mexico? I don't know. Like, this is just.
Yeah, I cannot wait to tell you all about this movie.
What the fuck? Oh my god! All right. Well, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. She's literally born in a cave in Peru
for magical
by
spider
magic.
people.
But the magic spider people get their powers from an actual spider that lives in Peru.
Yeah.
And they have it like bite her, and she gets magical web powers.
I have a
that
question
activate
for
30 years
you.
Later.
Because this is what I'm really asking is like, when do spoilers stop being spoilers and instead be warnings to not see a movie?
Oh, I didn't say spoiler warning because you shouldn't see this.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. When do they stop being spoilers and start being a warning to not see a movie? Right?
This level for sure.
What the fuck?
I've never seen literally. This is how I sat for most of the movie. So like it's the recliner chairs, right?
You're sitting back. You got your arms out, right?
And I have my arms crossed.
Yep,
I have my arms crossed,
okay.
feet up.
You're protecting yourself, right? This is protective body language. You're protecting yourself. Got it?
Every 10 minutes, something would happen, literally. And I would just sigh, and then I would kind of like slowly fall, and then my head would just land on the armrest, and I would just be laying there for a minute.
This movie,
and I'd have to, like,
this movie
take deep
was
breaths.
crushing your will to live.
It was. I would take a couple deep breaths. I'm like, whew, okay. And then I put my head back up and resume the position, and then about 10 minutes later, I would fall back over.
Okay, I've got another question.
It was exhausting.
When do movies stop being movies and start being tests of will?
This is a chore.
All right, cool.
This was
Let's get into
painful.
it, I guess. Let's go. Roll the theme music. Here we go. Oh my God, Peru of all places, and then they don't go back for the fireworks factory.
They do go back to Peru, but it's
Not for the fireworks factory, obviously.
So I've been practicing on how I can like speed run the plot of this movie, because realistically, it's a 2-hour movie that has the most basic plot ever. So I've been trying to figure out how I can speed run it really quick and then kind of go into detail on certain parts. But it is.
I mean, that's most. All right, let's.
Yeah. Welcome.
Well,
we each do a letter. Welcome
back
to
another
episode
of
the
Pop Podcast.
I
am
your
host,
Kevin.
No, you're Odie. This is horrible. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Pop Podcast. I am your host and Capitan todo siempre, Kevin Miner, he, him. With me as always is
Odie Matthews, the chef, cooking up the content. They, them.
We are not content this week. We are ruffled. We are Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo. We are Mark Ruffaloed by these movies that are coming out. Let's. So. Lovely episode this week. I think this was really good to talk about because we've mentioned it a few times in past seasons. Superhero fatigue. It's a real thing. A lot of people have been talking about it. I think fatigue is the proper word because people have been worn out by how much content was coming out. And, I kind of want to start from... you know me, I love delving into like the human experience side of things, like the psychological, the philosophical, and really I want to touch base on the mere exposure effect, which I know I've mentioned on the podcast before, but just to refresh everybody, it's also known as the familiarity effect, and it's where not every person, but many people tend to like things more based on the familiarity. And the best example I have for this is Christmas music, right? Christmas music, the Super Bowl, things like that. Like people who don't even like football will watch the Super Bowl because it's familiar. It's a thing. It's a cultural event. And this is the mere exposure effect. You are exposed to something to a certain amount that you like it, right? So like Christmas music, a lot of people are like, I love Christmas music from fucking September to January because that's when I hear it, right? But it's because you're exposed. It becomes part of your personal culture. There's a lot that goes into that, but instead of breaking that down, I also want to point out that on the flip side of the mere exposure effect, there can be the negative psychological connotation of you hear something so much and are merely exposed to it so much so often, right? So the quantity then outweighs the value that it's adding, and you start to dislike it, right? So then this explains two different types of people. This explains the types of people that are like, oh my God, I love Christmas music from fucking September to January, right? And then it also explains the people who are like, I cannot stand that Christmas music has to start up in September and has to end in January. I would like less of it, please. Right? Both of those people exist because of the mere exposure effect. And this is, in my opinion, what happened, not in my opinion, but just more so like an analytical observation, what happened with superhero content in general, right? Because we're talking about superhero fatigue and we're going to focus on the movies because to talk about all of it would be an insanely, it would have to be like a separate season of 5 episodes, Yeah,
it'd be like a 5-part mini episode series. Because
there were TV shows, right? There was extra content that came out alongside all of this superhero stuff, the development of the MCU, the development of the DCEU. But on top of that, comic books never stopped. So for some people listening who didn't dabble in that, even for people that are, big time into the comic book space, right? Who have been reading these different issues this entire time, they might, like, some of them got even more fatigued, right? Because they were like trying to keep up with the thing that they loved, and all of a sudden there was an abundance. It's like they had been like grabbing a cup of water from their sink for pretty regularly, like once a day for like however many years they were into this thing, and then all of a sudden the sink like was just like, yeah, we even if you just turn the faucet slightly, it's gonna blast at you this week.
Yeah,
like
it's like a water hose.
Oh, did you want a glass of water? Your kitchen's flooded.
Your house is gone.
Yeah.
It's underwater. Are you happy?
Yeah. So I came in. I wanted to focus specifically on the last decade because that's where I feel like the turn really happened. But you wanted to go back to 2008. So why don't you bring us back there, and then we'll work our way through.
Yeah. So. Okay. For those that might not know, there was comic book movies in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s.
You mean there was a Superman movie in the 80s?
Oh my God. Oh, Jesus. There was a Captain America movie in, I think it was the 70s or 80s, where he wore a motorcycle helmet.
Watch it.
But anyways, so.
Everyone should watch it.
It's actually pretty good. I personally think that the old school Punisher is pretty fun to watch sometimes with Dolph Lundgren.
Okay.
Yeah, anyways. So point being is that even before the MCU kicked off what I would say is like a new wave, new resurgence, and a new style of comic book movies for the most part, we had stuff before that. It's just, it was so bad that nobody remembers it because it was things like Daredevil and Catwoman and
oh my God, Ben
Daredevil.
Affleck. I totally forgot about that.
Halle Berry won a Razzie and an Oscar the same year for Catwoman.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That checks.
So,
I mean, there were so many Batman movies, you got your Keaton, Clooney, Kilmer.
Yeah.
Keaton,
and
Clooney,
then, I mean...
Okay. Hold on. Before we go any further,
hang on.
This movie needs to happen. Keaton, Clooney, Kilmer? Come on. This needs to be a low-budget, like, weird... semi-high stakes adventure in like I don't know fucking
they all have to go retrieve their own bat
Lake
suit.
Como, like they all get kidnapped by some guy who loves Batman. I don't know.
Oh my God,
that's what this needs to be for sure.
And then it could be a cameo from Christian Bale and Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
I love this. All right, well, that's the episode. We got to go write a movie.
Hold on one second. I need to help a damsel in distress. One sec. Keep talking.
Oh, okay. Anyways, so MCU kicks off in 2008 with technically the Incredible Hulk and Iron Man, but I think people kind of forget that the Incredible Hulk is technically canon in the MCU, but that's okay. But from 2008 to 2012, we saw things like, Iron Man, first Captain America movie.
Yeah.
We got Iron Man 2. We got
Iron Man
Thor,
3 that no one talks about from Shane Black.
And then 2012, I think, and people might disagree, but I would say the first Avengers movie in 2012 and then the experience that was seeing Infinity War and Endgame
that's 4 years later.
Yeah, but well, I think that those two events, because I would call them their events, they were experiences.
Yeah, they were cultural events. They were
I saw
Super
the first
Bowls
Avengers
for nerds.
movie. I think I saw the first Avengers movie like 10 times in theaters.
Yeah.
That's how much I loved it at the time.
Oh God.
But I feel like those were the two like highest points of superhero movies.
Okay.
And
so one is like a base camp, and then the other one is definitely like the high watermark that we reached over the course of the past 2 decades.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that leads us into 2014, like where you wanted to start, which I think there are a lot of good hits between 2014 and
2024.
a couple years ago. Well, there's nothing in 2024 that I would say is a hit in terms of comic book movies yet.
You mean Madam Web wasn't a hit?
I think Deadpool and Wolverine
that didn't
has
hit
a chance.
For you?
I think the Deadpool and Wolverine has a chance to be like a very solid comic book movie. But to your point, starting in 2014, I mean, we had so many comic book movies that weren't even in the MCU. And I have fond memories of the MCU, and I still maintain that, and from, first Iron Man to Endgame, there are a lot of good movies in there for the MCU, and there's a really good story being told as well, which is really impressive.
Yes.
not so much with the MCU now, but we also had the Snyderverse get kicked off. We had comic book movies from Image Comics, Dark Horse Comics. So we had all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
The Boys debuted, Invincible debuted. I mean, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles kept coming out. Like, I think people kind of forget just how much out there
hero content. Well, okay.
Yeah.
So let me also get into another part of the human experience, like something, and this is something. It's not an objective fact, and it's not even like a hard opinion. Like, I wouldn't bring this into a debate and die on this hill, but it's a nice thought experiment, and it's something that I like to throw out for people who are really into the creative space. Every movie is a superhero movie. We are watching people who are existing on a higher level than what we normally exist at, even if it's a low-stakes drama. And that's because these are people whose superpower it is, because it's written this way, their superpower is to say exactly what needs to be said to move the plot along, right?
Wait, does that mean that the Beekeeper's a superhero?
Absolutely. Like, in this thought experiment, and something that I like to throw out there is, like, when we're writing these stories, we write them with, like, the people writing them, right? Like, you write stories with such intent and purpose, hopefully, right? That as they go along, like the things that need to happen, and people say what they need to say, and they say it how they need to say it, right? In order to move the plot along. It's an elevated experience from what we normally have. Like, think about all the ums and uhs and second guessing and, like, all of these different things that we have in everyday life, right? And sometimes what ends up separating a film and making it stand out from the rest is when someone feels more grounded and more human. And that's because every single film we watch, there's an elevated experience happening. They are super people, right? They are above the normal human experience that we're having. Does that make sense?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because even when you do, like, a movie based off of a real person, right? Or, like, you try to tell their story.
Like Forrest Gump.
I hate that movie.
I know, me too. All right, keep going.
Oh, yeah. But, like, I mean, I've seen lots of biopics.
Even Wolf of Wall Street, right? Like, he's a superhero in his own right in that movie, right? The main character. Or, like, Lord of War, or, some other movie about a corrupt white guy. I don't know. Pick one.
Oh, Vice. The movie about Dick Cheney, the vice president.
Yeah, I mean, any of those. Like,
whatever.
But yeah, so they're elevated experiences. This is why we go to the cinema. This is why we go to the theater. It's always been that way. And when you go back in time, part of the reason it's always been that way is these are the stories that we tell that are interesting, right? There was I forget who said it. Was it Dostoevsky? I think it was Dostoevsky. It was either him or Kafka. He said, every story is either about someone leaving their town to seek adventure or a stranger coming to town and bringing something with them that starts the adventure of the story. And that's very reductive, but it's very true.
Nails that.
Well, they're all that Rebel Moon.
Yeah, Rebel Moon really does that well. They go to
do
a bunch of towns.
They do both.
They just do nothing but go to towns. Like, man.
but these knowing these things, I think, and breaking it down to its most simple is a good place to go when you're then approaching the quite literal super film, right? And going back to where we were talking, like really the reason this came up is because there's less of that coming out this year. And there are a lot of factors for that, but there also have been statements issued that there are going to intentionally be less of that content moving forward. And it's because they found the high watermark, and going back to the mere exposure effect, I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to something that's more of an event, that's more of a mere exposure type thing. Like, imagine if there were 5 Super Bowls every year. You'd get so fucking sick of the Super Bowl, right? And that's what entertainment conglomerates and corporations and streaming services attempted to do, was they were like, every fucking quarter there's a Super Bowl and we're going to make $1 billion off of it, right? Like, and everybody's just like, yeah, we're sick of the Super Bowl now. Like,
yeah. Which, I mean, that is, I think that the strikes maybe played a small part in it.
Oh, a small part?
Well,
they slowed everything down for sure.
Well, yeah, I think it definitely slowed things down. But in terms of, like, I think one of the things we saw as a huge impact from the strikes, and listen, just want to say this. Fuck the studios for doing that. Those people deserve the wages. I'm on the side of the writers and the creators. Just want to make that very clear.
Yeah.
Moving aside from the problem that luckily got solved with the strikes.
Ooh, you know what'll be fun? You be on their side. I'll be on the side of big corporations.
Oh my God, no!
Listen, Odie, we gotta make money.
But when
infinite growth. All right, keep going.
When you look at the strikes, like one of the impacts on the movie side of things, not the personal side of things.
Yes.
Was mostly stuff getting pushed back, right? We saw Dune 2 got pushed back from November or December of 2023 all the way, to March.
Famous MCU movie, Dune 2.
Yeah, the best one.
We keep saying Dune 2. It's Dune Part 2. It's not even Dune 2.
Yeah, Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2.
All right.
But most of the movies scheduled this year got pushed back because they couldn't finish filming, or just because people couldn't promote their films,
which was a good thing.
And for the
it was a bad thing.
Well, yeah, right.
Keep going.
But yeah, I don't think there was going to be a lot of superhero movies this year, anyways, because Disney has already stated multiple times that they need to scale back their content, and they're going to. And with the other big powerhouse being DC, they were already in the middle of James Gunn and Peter Safran taking over and revamping things. So regardless of what happened with the strikes, the DCU was getting a reboot, and Aquaman The Last Kingdom was going to be the last movie in December either way. So no matter what, DC wasn't going to have a lot of movies coming out this year. The only thing I think that is coming out is the Creatures Commandos TV shows that's animated.
Whatever. Yeah, okay. Yes, going off of what you were saying, Marvel, Disney, I think, here's, you going back, I guess I am on the side of the corporation. So you have these people... Well, so you have these people whose job it is to they do profit loss, right? Like they analyze profit and loss and opportunity cost, right? And these are like the opportunity costs and the value that the revenue that they were pulling out of these franchises, out of these properties, out of these experiences and events, as it started to lower, the profit loss stopped making as much sense as it would for Disney to then continue, right? So, and this happens with really almost anything. It even happens with like genres. Like one thing I came prepared to say was like, Noah Kahan's become super popular, and now you're hearing a lot of people who are writing in this much more modern American Americana folk style, right? And that's going to happen for a while until there's so much of it that only so many people are succeeding in it, and like the people who are the staples of that genre will stay there, and then a lot of people will peter off and find something else, right? And this is what Disney has to do in-house. They go, all right, we're not making as much as we did. We're not getting as many viewers as we got. We have to dial it back. And that dialing back actually starts a couple years before we notice it, right? So this has already been in the works for a couple years. And like you were saying, and this was a really good point that you brought up, James Gunn, he was announced to take over for DC, 2 years ago? 2022?
It was like... I was thinking it was definitely
was the announcement. It was like late 2022, early.
It was definitely 2022,
and
because I remember it affected a lot.
Yes, and when he got announced, all of a sudden you saw like those. They didn't can every project that was in the chamber. Like they didn't just go, all right, we're getting them out of here. We're loading it up with new stuff. No, like they allowed certain things to continue. They're like, all right, well, let's get what we can out of this, because they have to make money. Otherwise, it's a bunk investment, right? It's like hopefully a write-off, but probably not in many ways. And so they've gone back to the proverbial drawing board. And so I actually, not to Nostradamus tinfoil hat this entire thing, but I think what we'll notice in the next decade is we might start getting higher quality DC products for the first time ever, which will be interesting because it'll bring a new light to that entire comic book universe. But as we're getting that, we might get it a little bit, it'll be like going back to 2008, right? Iron Man came out in 2008. 2 years later, Iron Man 2 comes out, right? 2010. So we might be going back to this like, okay, cool. Well, we got the Batman movie, which was already 2 years ago. now we're coming into the next Batman movie, right? So like, and this is kind of proving the point, but I'm not looking to prove it in a hard way. I'm looking to just point out the pattern that exists that you were pointing out, where they've gone back to the drawing board. Things will start to trickle out, and if that popularity, if that profit, if that revenue that they're getting off of it makes sense to continue and ramp up, we'll see DC ramp up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know. I guess where my thought process goes with that is, I think of like Kevin Feige was definitely like, I don't know a lot about him, but it seems like he really knew what he was doing. Now, I've heard scuttlebutt that maybe he stole ideas, or maybe, you know, not every idea was his and he took credit for it, but, you know, I mean,
Odie, we just had our Everything's a Remix episode.
Yeah. Who knows? But you know, like, Kevin Feige really knew how for a decade to tell a really intricate story over multiple movies that also had their own story in them, and then somewhat interconnected to tell a bigger story, but it wasn't like every movie was setting up a sequel, which is basically what we're seeing now. But then I think about like Kathleen Kennedy, who for the most part did not know how to steer the ship of Star Wars, and now they're relying on Jon Favreau and the guy with the cowboy hat that created Rebels, whose name escapes me, Dave Filoni. And then, you know, over at DC, they handed the reins to Zack Snyder, and then almost immediately took them back.
Yep.
Because he made 3 movies. Like, that's it.
Well.
Yeah. 3.
Yeah.
Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League.
4, technically. Really milked that 3rd one.
Oh, well, I mean... Yeah.
Because we got the Snyder cut. Remember? It was 4 hours, and 45 minutes of it was slow motion.
Yeah, and it was the best movie ever. No. And everybody loved it. And he got like 1 million Oscars.
No, I'm not even going to joke about it.
Oh, okay. It's not as good. It's if only it was good as Rebel Moon. Best movie ever.
Best
movie but ever. I guess my point is with this is that, you know, it really, the success of comic book movies really does depend on who is steering the ship, and just also I think the like understanding these characters fundamentally, like, and to tie this really quick back into Madam Web. Sydney Sweeney, who
love
people
her.
Might know, I hate her.
From Mean
people
Girls.
Might know her. She's not in Mean Girls.
I'm just fucking around.
She's from Euphoria, and also a rom-com with Glenn Powell. But there's an interview of her where she was talking about her character, whose name I don't remember, and she's like one of the Spider Women, but like I said, they don't actually show up in this movie. It's not a spoiler. They're in the trailer, but they're not in the movie. She was like, I really wanted it to be, you know, comic accurate, and she hangs upside down, so I wanted her to hang upside down, right? And everyone was like, oh, cool, like she read the comics and she wants to be accurate. But her entire portrayal of this character is one of the worst performances I have ever seen in a superhero film. Her whole character is just being like a timid, shy girl, which is not the comic book version of this character at all. So what a lot of these actors and actresses are doing, if I may say so myself, this is my opinion here, but I think they're getting these roles, and back when like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth and Scarlett Johansson and people like that were cast, I think that they didn't pretend that they were in love with Captain America and Captain America was my childhood comic book hero. You know what I mean? Like nobody really pretended that they like were, this character was super important. Now, like some of them were actual fans of the comic book characters, but when they got cast, which, you know, that's one thing. But I think now, because people have lost interest, the studios have tried this angle of being, but look, like she read the comics. She knows all about the character. It's going to be a faithful portrayal of your favorite character. But I think really what happened is the studio execs were like, hey, we're going to send you an envelope and it's going to have 5 comic book panels. And that's what we want you to do. And just tell everybody that you you love the comic books and that you saw this in a comic book. I think that's what they're kind of doing, is just being like, look, here's comic book panels, like talk about them.
Yes.
Pretend like this matters.
Quick thing. Quick aside. I legitimately did think Sydney Sweeney was in Mean Girls. She was not. Ever.
Yeah, I said that.
All right, cool. I looked it up because she looks like the dumb blonde girl from Mean Girls, who was eventually in Snow White. No. Yeah, no, Red Riding Hood. Anyway, so like to get a little more specific, we've been talking kind of in general and around it. I think so there's less coming out. I think you have a good point about what is to be said about someone who knows and loves the property being at the helm, but it's a creative endeavor. And going back to me being on the side of big corporations, look, a lot of people have invested their time, well, not time, but money into this, Odie. They're all billionaires and millionaires, and they've invested money, and they get to see what they want to see on the screen. Okay, that's what we want. I'm going to say we now because I'm part of the corporation. That's what we want. We want to see what we want on screen. We want Jared Leto because we went to a retreat with him not long ago, where there was a bunch of creepy people wearing white on an island. We had an amazing time and worshiping spiritual journey, and now he needs to be Morbius, okay? But that is part of what ends up happening and what dilutes that culture. And I think time and time again, you see producers get it wrong, right? And they force creators out of this space where they're able to do what ends up making things popular in the first place. I mean, James Gunn, we're talking about him in relation to DC, but he pulled a feat with Guardians of the Galaxy 1 that no one had pulled yet. He took a unknown, I mean, I'm going to call it unknown. Like, pretty unknown. I knew like 2 characters from it, and like because it was coming out, I got excited and I was like, oh, I don't know much about this. I'm going to look into it, right? But there were so many people who had no idea who any of the Guardians, and this is before Chris Pratt was like superhero famous Chris Pratt, right?
Yeah, he was still on
kind
Parks
of his
and Rec.
breakout role, really.
Yeah.
But like James Gunn was like, no, I've got this dream and here's what I want to do, and they gave him creative space to do it, and it ended up being one of the best superhero films of the past decade, right? Like, well, it's over a decade ago, but it ended up being Guardians of the Galaxy was a record movie for them. And not only that, it was a milestone moment because all of a sudden people are like, oh, we can do weird shit. Like, without Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm going to say we probably never would have gotten Moon Knight. Like, it just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, that would have been a shame. I love Moon
And that's
Knight.
because another inclination that producers and people who are crunching profit loss and opportunity costs have an inclination to play it safe, right? Play with the properties that everybody knows, right? Captain America's a household name. Superman's a household name. Batman's a household name. So they want, like, there's a proclivity to play in that direction, and James Gunn showed that you didn't have to do that with Guardians of the Galaxy. And now that he's running DC, that's why I think you can look at it and go, okay, there's some hope that some cool things will happen here.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like his Suicide Squad movie. It's probably my favorite DC movie. Not a hard competition, but I really enjoy it.
Yep.
I like the cast. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I also want to say real quick, because I feel like people might call it out. I'm not saying that these comic book movies are accurate, because you made a good point. Like, it's what the producers want. And to be fair, there are some really valid points out there about criticisms of how some of these characters are handled. Like, I mean, one of the best examples that I can think of that people complain about, I personally don't have a problem with it, but like the way Captain America just apparently selfishly goes back in time to be with Peggy and comes back as an old man and everything.
How's that selfish? I mean, he actually sacrificed himself to change the future. Like, anyway, we could debate on that. Like,
or that like the first 3 Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland really aren't like accurate to how Spider-Man is, and by the time the 3rd one ends, he's like at his origin story finally.
I mean,
because like he kind of has all this tech, and usually Spider-Man doesn't have all this tech. And so, but to say all of this is to say that I understand that some of these aren't completely comic book accurate, but I would argue, as we talked last week in our remixes, I think that if you change a character and it still works within the story, it works. Because to some extent, yes, there are comic book stories that I have read. I am a fucking massive Moon Knight fan. I have all the Funko Pops. I have actual physical comic books of Moon Knight. I love Moon Knight. He's
Yeah.
one of my favorite characters. And like, yes, Moon Knight is. I love that show.
Yeah.
It's not completely comic book accurate to Moon Knight, but I don't really always want it to be. And this might be a me thing, but like sometimes it's nice to see a character you love portrayed in a different way, but still done well.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's done really, really, really bad, like Morbius.
Yeah.
If you're a huge Morbius fan, you're probably going to be let down.
Yeah.
Or if you're a huge Madam Web fan.
Yeah. You know, like, and here's the thing. These are movies that are based on comic books that many of which have been running since like the 60s or 70s, right? So we're talking 50 plus years now of these comics having existed. They've been rebooted in paper more times than they've been rebooted visually, like cinematically, right?
Yeah.
So like,
yeah.
And just I think, but part of the issue with some of the reboots and people having things that they do and don't like everyone has their favorite version of Batman, right? Like some people are like, I like Frank Miller Batman. I'm like, you need to go to therapy. And some people are like, and some people are like, I like classic Batman. And I'm like, you are old. And you know, but like, but no, like everybody has their favorite Batman. I mean, some people love Adam West. Like,
what's your favorite
and you're
Batman?
never gonna get that Batman. On like you're not gonna get Adam West in a full feature length film, and like I don't think anytime in the next few, not that style
He's
of
dead.
Batman.
So no,
He's gay. We can't do it.
no,
but
he's dead.
He's dead. Oh, sorry. I thought you said he's gay. We can't.
I was
do
like,
it.
Adam West is
he's
dead. He
Yeah,
died.
well,
Wow.
but what I
What's
mean
your
is you're
favorite
not gonna
Batman?
get that style, like that 1960s, 70s, like tune in next week, Cape Crusaders. Like like we're not gonna get that one in film anytime soon because like no one's like there's. Going back to how corporations analyze things, like there's not enough of an opportunity there for the cost to be justified, right? So, like, but then everybody has their favorite Superman, right? Like, that's fine. But what ended up happening with some of these cinematic ones is, like, Spider-Man, I think got rebooted a little too close to when the Raimi films came out.
Yeah,
but like.
It was
we also
2 years?
I think they made the most of it by doing the multiverse movies, and this is part of why I think things are slowing down. When you expand out into a multiverse where all of a sudden anything's possible and you could bring anybody back from the dead and it doesn't matter who dies or who does what where because there's another version of them that we can just go find and make the plot work out, like all of a sudden like it just becomes too much. It's like when you're playing on the playground, and like you're like, we're playing superheroes, and you're like, you're dead, and the kid's like, no, I'm not because of the magic, whatever, I'm
like invincible.
Yeah,
I have all the powers.
Yeah, like there's another me. That was not me. That was me from Earth 99B. Like, yeah, like, once you get into that, like you're stretching the way that we suspend our disbelief. Like you're stretching it so far that it just like. If there's not enough of a cool factor for the character for you, you're kind of like, whatever at this point, But one thing that I really did want to point out is there was a really cool thing that this boom brought us that I don't think gets brought up enough, and that was opportunities for other creative endeavors that kind of centered around the superhero realm. Like I loved Ludwig Göransson's Black Panther soundtrack. In tandem with Kendrick Lamar's curation of Black Panther, the album, which is completely separate from the Black Panther soundtrack. They both won Grammys. Like, amazing endeavors. Junkie XL comes in and does the soundtrack for Deadpool. Absolute banger. Like, so good to get... Like, Junkie XL... I hadn't even thought of Junkie XL for, like, 5 years. And then all of a sudden it was like, Deadpool soundtrack with Junkie XL. I'm like, that guy's sick. Hell yeah.
You know what? My favorite favorite sound to come out of the MCU.
Is it Black Panther landing and the sound, and it sounds like sound is being sucked away? Because that was in the Civil War movie, and it was amazing.
I think that one of the best, I'm trying to think of what the word is, but like, like when a character has like a cue music. Yeah. Like Wonder Woman's is like, or whatever. Yeah. The Avengers theme. Do you remember it?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna play it.
No. Play it for me later. But yeah. Okay. What's your point?
My, no, I was just
Oh.
you were talking about other, and I just think that
just
that
like the
theme
cue
is
music.
it's so recognizable,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's so good because the first time we hear it is it's that first time when it's panning around all the Avengers in the first movie.
Yes. Yeah, the
So good.
classic 360 shot
Yeah,
of all the
so
Avengers,
good.
including Hawkeye.
He was there finally.
He was there.
He made it.
You know, and I think an interesting thing that's probably happening with Marvel, going back to what we were talking about with DC, is that like they're also maybe not as actively or notably in the way that like an announcement of a new director and stuff like a new overseer of the entire franchise goes. Not in the same way that DC's doing it with James Gunn, but like they're also kind of going back to the drawing board. And I like that we're seeing like, okay, what can we do with these that's different now? How can we be different? Because I'd love to see some different superhero stories at this point. And yes, I like that we're getting less of it over time. Because I'm one of those people who like at somewhere around Infinity War, like I just wasn't even seeing that many. You know, like once we got to the point where there was like 6 a year, I think I was seeing 3 of them. You know, like but that's because I, like many people, when it comes to mere exposure, there's a lower threshold for me before I start going, yeah, this is too much. I don't know if I can do the Super Bowl every quarter, guys. Like this is like, well, everybody else enjoy and I think a lot of people, and it's not wrong to get caught up in the hype of it and be like, oh my, there's 4 crazy huge crossover events this year. I'm down for all of them. I think that's fine too. Love it. Enjoy the most out of it. But like, don't be surprised when in a couple years, because of that reaction, you are then quote unquote fatigued. You know? Like,
well, I mean, there have been attempts at telling like stylized and different stories based around, like there's the Brightburn, which is a James Gunn produced What If Superman as a Kid was a fucking psychopath.
Yes, yeah, you've
got
the unofficially endorsed evil Superman story.
You've got the TV show The Boys.
Yep.
You've got the Umbrella Academy, which I am super excited for the final season. I really like that one. August 3rd, I think it comes out.
I think even that falls into the fatigue category. Like that fell victim to the fatigue. It could have gone longer, but also like the actors are getting much older because it's been out for a while.
Well, Netflix also, they take forever if you're lucky to even get renewed to do the renewal.
Yeah, they're taking.
So I mean,
unless you're Red Notice.
Oh my god, I can't wait for Red Notice 7 back.
Right.
But yeah, like I think that the thing is with those other stories, like I think you're right. I think to some extent they also kind of fell victim to fatigue because like I look at The Boys and I'm like, man, I really enjoyed the first couple seasons, but then all of a sudden there was The Boys Diabolical, and then there was Gen V, and then there was articles being like Gen V plays into The Boys season 4, and I'm like, so does that mean I need to watch Gen V season 1? Now Gen V's got a season 2, and now there's another spinoff in the Boys universe in the works.
Okay.
And it's like,
the way that spinoffs are approached now is just microtransactions with extra steps. What they do is they tie just enough of the spinoff into the next season of whatever's popular so that you quote unquote have to watch it. But I don't think that big corporations like myself are considering that people that people will just read it. Like we'll just TLDR that shit. We'll be like, I don't want to watch 8 hours of TV to watch the next season of the book. That's like, it's exactly how microtransactions are treated. Oh, you didn't get that DLC? Well, you're going to have to play through it before you can get this DLC, right? Like it's downloadable content with extra steps. That's it. Like,
and that's
so
why
fucking stupid.
I think you'll agree that to me, and I've been thinking about this a lot. You know what I would consider to be one of the best spin-offs of the last decade that does a very good job of being a part of a larger universe, but having a story that you need to know nothing about that larger universe to fully enjoy?
Hold on. Is it House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones spin-off? Because that's the one.
Andor.
Oh, all right. Oh, yeah, no, for sure, yeah.
Andor. Andor does a great job of dropping you in this universe, and you just know that, oh, like there's a bigger threat, and this guy can help stop it, and he goes on these like there's 3 like little missions that he goes on, and like I think that you can really enjoy that even if you've only seen the original trilogy of Star Wars or no Star Wars
well,
even.
And I've explained that to a few people. I've been like, I've explained that. I haven't explained it. I've pitched. Let me rephrase. I've pitched Andor with that, like a very short pitch. I'm like, it's the most least Star Wars thing ever. You don't have to know Star Wars to watch it. But it's like it's a thriller. It's a political thriller, is what it really is.
Yeah.
You don't have to know the Star Wars universe to be dropped into Andor and enjoy that. And I think that's doing a spinoff well, because you don't have to know anything else, and there's nothing else that you have to watch after it to get more of it, right? Like it's self-contained, and I think the best stories, going back to like the human experience, the best stories are self-contained, and that's where a lot of like superhero movies stem, if we're going to go back to the proper beginning, from mythology, right? We had gods, and then someone got creative enough to go, hey, these gods have been having children. What if they're half god? Because we know that, right? So now we've got demigods. Let's tell stories about them, right? And those are like really demigods in Greek mythology, and people who were related to the gods or like connected to them, and to the point that like they had these bigger legends about them. I think that's the beginning of superhero stories, right? And I mean, even like you can go nail on the head. We have Thor, right? Like Thor is just a superhero now. Like he is a god.
Hercules
also
is literally in the Marvel.
Yeah. But like
Hercules exists.
But apart from those, I think like even you have Perseus, you have you have a lot of the elements of Hercules, you have a lot of the elements of Thor, you have a lot of the elements of Odin, or even some of the bigger trials of like Odysseus. Well, I mean, how many people have died and come back in the superhero universe at this point? But
exactly.
But you have a lot of those elements that bleed into that, because we're constantly going back. Everything's a remix. We're retelling these stories, but we're telling them and we're updating them. We're making them more relevant. We're making them fun for people to enjoy again. And that's why I think it's totally fine. Like, maybe we need a little more distance and time in between when things get rebooted. But I'd be like, dude, if like 10 years from now you're like, Spider-Man's a woman now, I'd be like, I don't care. Fine, let's go.
Spider-Man's been a woman.
Well, but what I mean is like, like the Spider-Woman for the next, like,
Patricia Parker.
It's phase 10 and we're doing woman Spider-Man.
Patricia Parker.
Yeah, whatever.
Sister to Peter Parker.
We're doing Spider-Trans. I don't even care. Like
oh,
whatever.
That's good.
Right?
That's good.
Like, whatever. I don't care. Like if there's enough distance and time in between it, I'm just going to go and I'm going to go, all right, is it a good story? Because that's all I really care about.
Can we do a spider they?
Yeah, spider they.
Spider they.
Spider them.
Spider them.
I love it. No, we should. Like, I would be 100% fine with it. Just make the story good, right? Like, I don't care. Miles Morales is probably my favorite Spider-Man at this point, just because it's a different twist on it. It was fresh, and it was enough that like, and the more I learned about it, the more I was like, oh, this is fucking dope. Like, yeah, I like Miles more than I like the other Spider-Man. And it's just the elements and the way that he approaches solving crime and like stuff like that. And like throughout all of this, even now, like, and this is something we don't have to really get into this. It's a whole other podcast, but like comic books are still being released. Like like new Marvel, like new epics in the Marvel and DC universe are always happening, sometimes simultaneously. Like sometimes you have two huge comic book events happening for even the same characters. Like there are so many different versions of Wolverine alone that have existed in the MCU, and like the other, like the smaller offshoot comic brands of the MCU. I just saw it the other day. The guy who drew Max, remember MAXX? Like they were really grainy, and they almost had like a Ralph Steadman look to them. Like there was a lot of ink all over the page and like scratch marks and stuff. There's a picture of Wolverine like perched on like a dead tree trunk, and it's in that style. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that like that actually existed for a hot second. Like there was that Wolverine, and he's different than every other Wolverine, and I think, when it comes to cinema and TV and things like that, like because they're directly tied to celebrities, there then becomes like this version that a greater number of people, because this is more accessible than comic books. Not everybody's going to sit down and read a comic book. That's not for everybody. But more people enjoy movies. More people enjoy TV. So there's going to be a greater portion of people always who are adhering to, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. So, like, when they go to recast Wolverine, of course, there's going to be a diehard fandom that's like, no, don't do it. Like, no, that's our Wolverine, and, like, you don't pick the right person, they'll be like, oh, you fucked up, and now we don't like Wolverine for the next 2 movies, Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's... Yeah. So, you mentioned the casting thing. Did you see they released the cast for the Fantastic Four?
No.
So...
Nor do I care.
That
movie's been rebooted and failed so many times.
I'm excited for this one.
Go on.
Because I do like the Fantastic Four.
Is Chris Evans back as the Human Torch?
No. Well, okay, so remember, did you hear that Doctor Strange 2, John Krasinski showed up as Mr. Fantastic?
Yes. Yeah, but he showed up as the version of Mr. Fantastic that becomes a tyrannical ruler. Yes.
Yeah, and then it becomes string trees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
John Krasinski has been like the fandom choice for Mr. Fantastic for like years.
Which
for
makes
whatever
sense.
reason.
He's got the look. He's got the voice. It's fine.
Yeah. And so Pedro Pascal is Mr. Fantastic.
I'm fine with that.
Joseph Quinn, who played Eddie in Stranger Things, is the Human Torch.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Vanessa Kirby, who I only recognize from Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw.
Yep.
She's Sue Storm. And then Cousin from The Bear is the Thing. Now, keep in mind, he's been Grimm for like probably the first quarter of the movie, and then he's just going to be doing the voice and mocap of the Thing.
Yeah,
but...
I was going to say that's kind of weird. I mean, he's got like whatever. I mean, casting directors are going to do what they're going to do, right? And like a lot of people get brought in order to make more money. I mean, this happens. We were just talking about musicals last episode. Like, this happens with musicals all the time. They bring in Hollywood actors rather than Broadway actors to bring in more of a crowd. The Bear's huge right now. He was in Andor as well. Like, of course he's going to get the thing.
He was also in the Punisher TV show.
Yeah, and he's going to... So more people are going to be brought in because this actor... He was in, what was the Jennifer Lawrence movie? Where she's the burnout chick in Martha's Vineyard or whatever. I forget. She fights people on a beach. I forget. Anyways. Yeah.
But yeah,
he was in that movie too.
Yeah. So like the Fantastic Four cast comes out and people are like, they're finding reasons to be upset about it. Right.
Yeah.
But like realistically, the studio probably wasn't ever going to listen, and they don't really listen if people are like, well, we want John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic and Zac Efron as the Human Torch, and we want John Krasinski's wife to play Sue Storm, and we want, I don't know, somebody to be the Thing. I want to be the Thing. Put me in as the Thing. Yeah. Like, people are always going to be upset, and the thing, and you kind of hit it, like, the thing is like, at some point, when the Thing, at some point, when you sat down in the theater in 2008 to watch Iron Man, you had to have realized, or at least realize now, at some point, Robert Downey Jr. isn't going to be able to be Iron Man, and somebody else will inevitably be Iron Man.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen with
or
every
Iron Woman. Or Iron Then.
Ironheart.
I love this now, and I want non-binary superheroes.
Same.
First off, Ultron is non-binary. They are a robot. They are all robot. And this is something that someone brought this up, that like in the sci-fi universe, we just did not have enough. We weren't far enough along culturally in the real world to recognize this, but there are a ton of non-binary characters just all over like fantasy and sci-fi, just because they're non-gendered in general. Like, so yeah, of course they're not male or female. They don't fall onto that spectrum. They're non-gender. Like Groot, non-binary.
That's a tree.
That's a tree, baby. Not only that, it's a tree that apparently just becomes a seed. Like, there's not even like they're asexual as well. So yeah, self reproducing. But yeah, so you're right though. Like Iron Man eventually ages out. That's what happens in real life, right? Because these are real people who are going to age out of these roles. Tom Holland can't be a high schooler much longer. I don't know.
He's getting there.
I like pause. I'm like, how much longer can he be a high? We got 2 years, 3. Like
maybe
when is his voice gonna be deep enough, or is he just gonna look creepy enough? You know, like. He can't be a high schooler much longer. Or, like, Spider-Man has to have graduated from high school, and maybe we'll get, like, one more with him. But I'd be totally fine. Like, you don't – once again, distance and time. Give it a few years. Then give us real, like, live-action Miles Morales. We're the last part of Across the Spider-Verse is happening next year. So, like, give us a break from that. Take a break. There's so much. There's so many cool things to grab from in the comic book universe. I know that there's talk about a reboot, but who knows when or if it'll properly happen. Is Spawn? Like, I loved Spawn.
Oh well, that is. I know that their Todd McFarlane is crowdfunding that and has been trying. Jamie Foxx's cast, like
fuck Jamie Foxx. Get him out of here. No, new actor. Brand new. I want brand new actors for this. Also, John Leguizamo played one of the best villains I've ever seen when he played Clown
in the original Spawn.
Yes, Clown and Malbolgia. Clown and Violence. Was it Violence? I don't fucking Malbolgia was the anyway.
Anyways.
Yeah, but like I'm trying to remember Spawn from when I was like 10 years old.
Yeah.
But
I've seen that movie once.
But so like that was a superhero I loved as a kid growing up. I was like, wait, you mean there's a superhero from hell and he doesn't just stop bad guys, he kills them? I'm in.
I liked Ghost Rider
right?
for that reason.
Oh fuck! It is. Fuck it is.
It
is Ghost Rider.
It's Ghost Rider.
It's his Ghost Rider.
I loved Ghost Rider. But I love the Ghost Rider movies too.
Yeah. But so like, like reboots, give it time, give it space, and then bring these people in. I think the question becomes like, where does this go next? And I think enough experiments have happened in different realms that I think what you'll see something that is akin to a reboot, but is not like hard reboots of things. You might even see like some passing of powers. I would also like to see the multiverse stuff dial back. Like I'd almost love it if there was like a subplot where someone's like, the multiverse has been shut off. Like
we hit this closed door button.
Turns out we're stuck to one ever expanding universe, guys. It's real small now. We just like,
is Iron Man?
There's just billions of star systems. That's it. Just those billions of star systems. Nothing else.
The entire cosmic universe.
Just an entire cosmic universe here. Nothing else though.
But Iron Man's still dead.
Yeah, but yes, but Iron Man is still dead. Unfortunately, isn't that right, Jarvis?
And Captain America's old.
Jarvis.
And Jarvis is the Vision.
Well, I was gonna say no, it's Jarvis again, and is just voiced by someone new, like Paul Dano is Jarvis. I don't know.
Oh my god! You know what though?
What?
This is the last point that I have, and
Final
since I brought
point.
up the Fantastic Four, that movie is going to be set in the 1960s.
Oh, cool.
So,
okay, I'm more on board now.
So the thing is, though, obviously with 2 Avengers movies on the horizon, Secret Wars and, it was Kang Dynasty, but I'm sure they're going to change that since Jonathan Majors is not a good person anymore.
He got canceled, baby.
Yeah,
for good reasons.
Beat his girlfriend.
Yes.
Yeah, he beat his girlfriend or something.
He did a lot of bad things. He had a very Ezra Miller moment.
So the thing is like, obviously the Fantastic Four are going to be in that.
Yeah.
And that's going to be set present day. So that means that already, because we know we're in this multiverse thing, if you are a comic book fan or have enjoyed comic book movies in the past, you probably are realizing the thing that I'm realizing, which is, okay, well, that means at the end of this movie, they either need to time travel to our time, which I guess, or they're going to get ripped out of whatever they're at to be in Secret Wars and stuff, and then they're going to get plopped in the current MCU, like, up-to-date timeline. Because they're not going to be able to stay in the 60s.
I mean, yeah, whatever it is. But, like, I mean, even if they do, I think that'd be fine. Like, it gives you... if they stayed in the 60s, right, if you kept them in the 60s, you could actually recast every superhero around them, which I think would be great.
Exactly. I
like
think
that would be
cool
and just be like, that's its own thing. Yes, it's still our universe. Yes, they're different characters, but who cares? Shove it. Right? Because that's what happens in comic books is they're like, yes, we're telling a story in the 1960s. We're also telling a story in 20 139. Like deal with it, nerds.
Yeah.
But like that's what it says on the Marvel comic cover.
This
deal
is
with it,
tagline.
nerds.
Fantastic Four, deal with it, nerds.
But like I would deal with it.
Yeah.
But I think it, like, you know, could you imagine just Kevin, like, I imagine Kevin Feige is stepping down because enough things have been canceled or changed or like fan hated off screen. Like, just so many things have happened now. And I think Jonathan Majors was like the final straw. I bet Feige even like took his hat off. Like, he was like,
finally took the hat off.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, this is fucking stressful. I don't know how to deal with
somebody else.
And everybody's like, oh.
Your problem now.
And then on his head was just like, I don't know, one of the fucking stones. I don't know.
It was another hat, and it said DC.
DC. Oh, he's gone. But yeah, so, you know, that's another issue that you run into with these is like there are people who have real world conflicts and actors who have real world conflicts even in their contracts that prevent them from being or doing certain things, and then things have to be rewritten. And the challenge of that, I think we often overlook that because we're always looking at the product as consumers, right? So we don't consider, oh, there's all this chaos going on around it because of these actors. But that's part of the other reason that I'm like, cast a no-name actor to play new superheroes. Like, cast people who are good at acting, who maybe don't have a ton of credits yet, right? And get them into it. And like, if they like it and they sign on for like a 3-film deal, 4-film deal, that's great. You got them for 4 films, right? And hopefully they just don't fuck up. Like,
yeah.
I mean, hopefully. I guess that kind of was what happened with Ezra Miller. Like, they weren't that big, and then they got contracted for big films, and then just lost their mind.
Yep. And, you know, speaking...
That's why you don't do too much DMT, folks. Don't do that.
Might kidnap people. But speaking of the thing you said...
the thing.
Mine...
yeah, cousin?
Madam Web.
You already broke it down in the beginning. I don't want to hear this again. You gave me all the main plot points of Madam Web already.
I did not. I didn't even though.
Let's do it as your not jam, and then give me a rough brush over. I have to put spoilers in the intro of this episode because of you.
I guess, but nobody cares.
Well, they're warnings, right?
Yeah, they're warnings to stay away.
Spoiler warnings.
Stay away warnings.
Caution spoilers.
Well, no, I wanted to lay out the entire, like, how this movie goes and get your thoughts.
We're already over an hour, so I want it to be Reader's Digest.
Okay, well then you're gonna have to keep the interruptions to a minimum. Okay, I guess that's my cue. Okay, so the movie opens with, and like I said, spoilers, I guess.
I can't stand this movie. All right, keep going.
The movie opens with Madam Web's mom, and by the way, her last name is actually Webb.
Whatever.
It's like
go. Keep going.
Cassandra Webb, I think. Hang on.
Nope.
Yeah,
Don't look it up.
Webb.
Yep, it's Webb. Go.
So her mom is researching spiders in the Amazon.
In Peru.
While she is... Yeah, that one too. In Peru. I'm glad you remembered. See, you love this movie. She's researching a specific type of spider in Peru while she is 9 months pregnant.
Yes.
Okay.
Very dedicated to her work. Keep going.
She's with this guy, Ezekiel Sims.
Yep.
Who is supposed to be like her security.
Great.
And the spider has magical powers. And there's a myth or rumor that there are spider people who jump around on top of the trees in Peru and protect the forest and the spiders.
Peruvian spider people. Got it. Go.
So she finds the spider, and he shoots her and everybody else and takes the spider and runs away.
Okay.
And then the magical spider people take Madam Web's mom to a cave in Peru where she gives birth to her daughter. And that's where she gets bit by the spider. Her mom dies. And then somehow, okay, this baby that was born in a cave in the middle of the fucking jungle in Peru,
yes.
Not only does it make it back to America alive in one piece, it then becomes an American citizen, even though it was born in a cave in Peru, and enters the foster system.
Okay.
Yeah, so great writing. We flash forward 30 years, and She is an EMT who works with Adam Scott is in this movie, by the way.
Great, keep going.
Who I love. He plays Ben Parker, who is Peter Parker's uncle.
Great, keep going.
And they're paramedics together,
Mm-hmm.
and she like gets trapped in a car and dies, and then he brings her back with CPR.
Okay.
And that like activates her spider powers, and now she starts seeing glimpses of the future. Like, she sees her paramedic captain get hit by a truck, and then like she like sees the events play out again, and then she's like, "Oh my God, I could have stopped it." And so throughout the movie, she meets these 3 girls who are the Spider Women that are advertised in the trailer.
Yep.
You saw the trailer, right?
Nope. Keep going.
Oh. So like Ezekiel Sims is the bad guy from the Amazon.
Yep.
Now he has spider powers because he captured the spider.
And then forced it to bite him.
Yeah, he did.
He's like,
and
"You're
now
gonna
he's
bite
cursed.
me right now." All right, keep going.
Because he took the spider out of the forest, he's like cursed.
He's like, "You better give
For
me
some
fucking
reason.
powers, but also because I took you." Yeah, all right, cool. Yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean. Yep, you take the gold.
Pretty
now
much.
You're cursed.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
But also, like, he's not cursed, though, because realistically, like, he has all the powers, and the only reason he is even, like, a villain is because he has these visions of these 3 spider women killing him.
Well, power is a blessing and a curse, because with great power comes great responsibility. Keep going.
So, luckily, that is not said in this movie, because then I would have walked out. I would have walked out.
Keep going.
So
with great visions come great responsibilities.
Now, keep in mind, this movie is set in 2003.
Uh-huh.
And he, like, hacks in to satellites.
Does everyone have a
stuff.
BlackBerry? That would be very on brand.
Honestly, I don't remember seeing any phones.
In 2003?
Like,
that was the was the era
in the movie.
baby.
In the movie.
Oh.
I'm saying.
God.
There's a lot of landlines, but
weird.
He like has this girl that like can hack into satellites and like has facial recognition software,
Great.
like stuff that like, 2003, I guess. And basically all 4 girls, Madam Web and the 3 spider people, end up on a train, and she has a vision of Ezekiel Sims killing them because he finds out that those are the 3 girls that kill him in his vision, and so she saves them, and they go on the run, and that's why she gets accused of being a kidnapper by the NYPD.
Ezekiel Sims is evil Spider-Man?
Yeah, he's evil Spider-Man.
Right, keep going.
And Sydney Sweeney's character, when she literally, like, Ezekiel Sims is like, he's in his weird Spider-Man suit, and he's like beating up cops, and Sydney Sweeney is like, "Help! This lady is kidnapping us," which is like the reason why she becomes an accused kidnapper, even though she literally just saved her life.
Yeah.
Which I just want to say real quick. The one thing about this movie that makes it so unbearable is every single performance of every single actor or actress in this movie, with the exception of Adam Scott, feels like they are reading off of cue cards with no emotion.
Great.
Like every single conversation just feels like 2 people reading off of cue cards. Yeah. Monotone and everything. And the villain,
Sydney Sweeney
Ezekiel
plays
Sims,
a lot of monotone characters. All right.
Well, she's a
Keep
bad
going.
actress. But Ezekiel Sims, his lines, I'm not kidding, Kevin, almost probably 80% of them are ADR'd.
Okay.
And you can obviously tell.
Okay.
Keep going. So, long story short, kind of, because this is like the halfway point of the movie.
You said long story short, wrap it up.
Shut up. Let me. You said I could talk about this. You said I would have 20 minutes, Kevin.
No, I didn't.
Yes,
I never gave you a time quote.
I have the text.
That counts the 4 minutes at the beginning of the podcast.
So, Dakota Johnson's character, Madam Web, she like discovers, oh my God, Ezekiel Sims is the guy that was with my mom in the Amazon, and then she hits him with her car.
Okay.
And then she gives the kids to Ben Parker, and it's like, hey, I got to go to Peru and find out what's going on. And that's where she finds out that she has all these spider powers. And then she goes back to America. Okay. And this is the funniest part to me. And I kind of laughed out loud. I don't think it's supposed to be funny. But then Mary Parker, who is Peter Parker's mom. And she's pregnant. And she's played by Emma Roberts, by the way.
Great.
She's like, oh, hey,
strong female
I'm having this baby.
Mm-hmm.
We got to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And so because they go to the hospital, the bad guy's like, oh, there they are. I'm going to go kill them. And then that's when Madam Web shows up and hits him with an ambulance.
Yep.
She literally drives it off a parking garage, and he jumps, and then she hits him in the air.
Well, because she's an expert ambulance driver, right? They
actually,
let you know that
yes.
in the beginning of the movie.
They do.
She was a paramedic, so she knows how to drive those things.
You're not. Legitimately, there are multiple scenes in this movie of her driving crazy and being a good driver, and characters in the background, one of them being Sydney Sweeney, being like, "You really are a good driver." Anyways, literally that's a line in the movie. But
so dumb.
She basically like takes them to this fireworks factory with a Pepsi sign, and she starts using her vision powers because now she knows how to see the future.
Just imagining that's how they pitched it for the fucking movie. Like, and then they go to a fireworks factory with a big Pepsi sign that has nothing to do with anything right now, guys. Don't even pay attention to the fact
don't
that
even
I said
worry about
Pepsi.
that.
Don't even worry about that.
Yeah,
don't even worry about it.
But
They're in a fireworks
Pepsi
factory,
sign.
so there's going to be big. You know what's going to happen here. You know what I'm talking about. Michael Bay ain't seen shit. All right. Keep going.
There's definitely not a 5 to 10 second clip just panning around the Pepsi sign of the warehouse.
No, not at all.
There is. There definitely is.
No, not at all.
So she starts using her vision powers to be like, oh, I can see the future now. So she's like, duck. Oh, turn left. Oh,
she could see the future
punch.
Before.
Yeah, but now she can control the powers.
Oh,
because
okay.
Before she couldn't, and she only says that she can't control them. There is
This is
literally
like
a
that
scene...
Nicolas Cage movie where he kept splitting himself up
Next.
into possible futures. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
That's a good movie.
No, it's not.
It's better than
Keep
this.
going.
It's better than this.
No.
There's literally
Just because
a
it's
scene...
better doesn't mean it's good.
No, by contrast. No, there's literally a scene where the 4 main characters are sitting around, and each one of the girls is like, well, what about this thing? And Madam Web's like, I don't know. And they're like, well, what about this? And she's like, I don't know. And they're like, well, what are we doing here? And she's like, I don't know. It's literally like 5 questions, and she's just like, I don't know.
That's
to all
so
of them.
dumb. Keep going.
It's the worst writing I've ever seen.
I don't know.
And so, yeah, they're in like
Even
the
Madam
firework
Web.
factory, and she's using all her powers. And she called in a chopper. She used the ambulance to be like, I need a medical evac on top of this roof. And they're like, yep,
Okay.
we'll be right there. Okay, bye.
Okay.
And
No one
so
questioned
fireworks
that
are-
at all.
yeah, no one questioned it because you can just call in choppers if you're a paramedic.
In 2003, you can.
I
It
guess.
was a wild time. You never did that, Odie? You never called in a
No.
medical evac in 2003?
Oh, I did once. I did once as a prank.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. It was great. They
You
showed
got
up
me.
and everything. They're
Yeah.
like, you owe us $20,000.
And I said, I can pay you in blocks.
Keep going.
So the factory starts to explode with all these fireworks.
Yeah.
And
It
they end up
starts
on
to
the-
explode.
Yeah,
Very
they end up
slow
on the
explosion
they end up on the roof.
of this
And,
starting to explode factory.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're starting to explode factory. You know, the bad guys chasing them.
Are there
A
fireworks shooting
firework-
through the roof?
Yes, and one of them hits the chopper and it explodes.
So dumb. Wait,
And then-
it hits the chopper? Yeah. The chopper explodes because of a firework?
Yeah,
That's the dumbest thing. Keep going.
and so then all at once, all 3 of the girls, one of them falls and is like hanging on a bar over the building that's now on fire.
Oh my God.
One of them is like clinging on to like this guardrail over one of the sides of the building. Like they're all dangling.
Madam
right?
Web's
They're all
like, how do
hanging
I
off.
save all of these women?
And the Madam Web's, yeah, basically, and Ezekiel Sims is like, I have beaten you. You are defeated.
You
And
can't
she's
save
like,
all of them.
He literally, they say multiple times, the villain does, your mind can't beat my power. And she's like,
What?
but my mind can. And then she splits up into 3 ghost versions of herself
And saves
somehow.
them.
And saves them.
Great.
And then, because she saw the future, she knows
So
that
that's not
the
her
signs...
mind beating them. That's her power beating his power. Anyway, keep going.
Don't think about it too hard.
But it's her
which I
mind. I
did.
have to think about it. All right.
So then, because she could see the future, she knows that the sign on top of the warehouse for Pepsi Cola
It's gonna fall on
fireworks,
him.
trademark pending, is weak. And so he like lunges at her, and she like, whoop, and he,
She
she's like whoops.
is that what she does? Is that that's a big tagline? There's no like there's no see you tomorrow or have a Pepsi and smile, motherfucker. There's none of that.
He says
she just
the
goes,
he says
"Whoop."
the. The bad guy says your mind is no match for my power.
It's on the DVD box. Whoop. Whoop.
But she does get knocked into the water, and
into the water.
Yeah,
her greatest
they're
weakness.
on the
We've known this.
spiders can't swim.
They can't.
And then the bad guy falls onto the ground and he starts to get up, and then the P from Pepsi Cola smushes
Just
him.
the P?
Yeah, and then you can see his head through the circle, and he's like, all dead. I'm dead. And she's in the water, and a firework shoots through the water and hits her in the face.
Wait,
and she goes,
This is a Sony one, right?
Yeah.
Oh, this track.
Spum.
All right, cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's Spum.
This is as bad as the Venom movies.
Venom movies are actually fun though.
Sure.
This is not fun.
Sure.
I mean, I had fun with Venom too.
Sure.
But a firework goes through the water and it hits her in the face, and she goes, and then she gets knocked down. She's like, okay. And then she starts to drown. But then all three of the Spider Women jump into the water. I say Spider Women, by the way. They don't.
Women.
There is one shot of them in their comic book suits, and it's in Ezekiel's dream, and it's for about 5 seconds.
Yep.
They have no powers. I want to make that clear.
Great.
They have no powers
Love
this entire movie. And they save her, and she goes to the hospital, and traditional comic book Madam Web, she has no feet. She has like one like long like ghostly tail kind of looking thing.
Yeah.
And she's blind. And so now Dakota Johnson, she's blind. And she's in a wheelchair like Professor X.
Yep.
And she, at the end of the movie, she's like, these three orphan people, they're not orphans, but all their parents hate their kids for the 3 Spider Women.
Okay.
They all have bad parents.
Yep.
She's like, these are my kids now.
3
We're going to live together.
women are mine.
Yeah. They're all supposed to be like 16, 17.
Sydney Sweeney is
she's
not
30.
16, 17.
No, she's 27 in real life.
Yes.
And she's playing like a 16-year-old.
How long can she play a high schooler?
Also, she's in like a skirt and like schoolgirl outfit the entire movie, which is really weird. But
that is weird.
Whatever.
All right.
So they're in this
Odd
apartment.
choice, but okay.
And the 3 girls walk in and they're like, hey, Madam Web person, we got. And she's like, oh, I love takeout. And they're like, how did you know? And then she's like, bless you. And then one of them sneezes, and she's like, you know, she's predicting the future because she could see the
and
future,
then
which
she
would be so
winks with her
fucking
blind
annoying.
Eye. Whoop.
And then the movie ends.
Whoop, you're gonna
with,
sneeze. Whoop.
The movie ends.
Looks like you got takeout. That's her catchphrase now. Whoop.
Whoop. Whoop. I love that. And then the movie ends with Dakota Johnson, who, by the way, like, she's from 50 Shades of Grey, for those of you that might not know. She's got 2 really famous parents that are actors, and she is terrible in this movie. She is phoning it in, no effort, doesn't give a shit, monotone. She literally is like, at the end of the movie, and I'm going to try to replicate her tone.
I'm done blaming the actors for this. I'm convinced directors just show up and they're like, well, we all know we're going to make a couple mil. Let's churn this baby out.
You know, you say a couple mil, and quite literally this movie made 2.6 million so far.
Big Daddy Corporation says we're getting paid today. Why don't we just read these lines off this script, huh? How about that?
Cue card.
All right.
And so the movie ends with all of them in their suits, like just hovering in the sky,
like the comics.
And she literally is saying, Madam Web is saying, and I'm gonna try to replicate the tone and everything, but
do it.
She says,
"Whoop!
I see everything. I see you guys standing up for what you believe in and being there for people when they need you."
She says,
because that's what this means. And that's pretty much how she says it. No enthusiasm, not like, I see you guys in the future, like no effort, no nothing. And then it just, it ends. And this movie is 2 hours long with bad writing, bad acting, horrible CGI. It looks like a fan film with CGI.
Yep.
There are 2 action sequences in this entire movie. There are multiple scenes where they're just like standing around and they're just being like, I don't know. What's going on? Is this guy evil? I don't know. How come you don't know? Well, I just don't know. Well, you're an orphan. You're a foster kid. I'm a foster kid. Yeah, we're all foster kids. I don't know. Maybe I'll go to Peru. The spider power people and stuff. Like, there's no web. There's nothing. They don't even say it's webbing time. Like, nothing.
No webbing time. Whoop, it's webbing time.
And to all this to be said, right? Like, and I probably made this movie actually sound better than it is, which is probably hard to believe.
You did not.
But it's pretty fucking shitty.
You did not.
The thing is, I was thinking about it when we were talking about this today, and I was like, okay, from 2008. Yep. So I'll leave out the early 2000s movies of like Daredevil and Catwoman and, you know, Punisher and things like that.
Okay.
from 2008 to now, across DC, Marvel movies from Fox, Sony, Disney, whatever, what would be the worst comic book movie that I've seen since 2008? And I was like, well, you've got movies like The Fan Four Stick with Josh Trank, which that one's pretty bad. Morbius is pretty bad. You know, like X-Men Origins Wolverine is pretty bad.
Yep.
And I've been thinking about this since I saw this movie on Valentine's Day.
What's the worst one?
And so for everybody's reference, that was on Wednesday.
Okay.
Now it's Saturday. We're recording.
Okay.
So I've thought about this for a couple days.
Okay.
Madam Web is the worst comic book movie
the worst one
I have ever seen.
Okay.
And I stand by that. And even compared to like...
You're sexist, Odie. This is very sexist of you.
Fuck!
I can't believe you would dislike
it.
a women-led superhero team in 2024. How dare you?
I wanted it to be Them Web. But they said no.
Mad Them Web.
Mad Them Web. But like... In the last thing, my last point,
okay,
and then I will wrap this up, is even if I took like old Ghost Rider and the 2005 Daredevil film and the Catwoman film,
okay,
those movies, there is something to them that like it's so like people are at least putting in effort with their performances, and like they're so
Halle
campy.
Berry's amazing.
Yeah, like they're so campy, and the CGI is bad, and the CGI is bad because it's dated,
but they're
which
also
makes it kind of like
campy too. Like that
exactly.
was the thing.
And I think that those movies are more enjoyable because Madam Web has 4 screenwriters,
yep,
a director who has no good credits under their belt,
yep,
from Sony Studios with a big budget with people like Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, Isabel Merced, who's going to be Hawk Girl in the new DC. It's got Adam Scott. Hawk Girl is in DC. It's got, Emma Roberts. It's got Mike Epps. Mike Epps shows up in this movie,
dude. It doesn't matter
like,
who you cast in something. Like, if the writing's not good, you can't save it. If the directing's not good, that's why I'm saying I'm not blaming any actors for this one.
No.
Like,
well, that's my point is that this is a big budget movie with big actors, but because the writing and directing is so bad, it is a movie that is trying to be good and thinks it's good.
Yeah.
Unlike the movies of the early 2000s, which, they might have thought they were good and they had a good cast, but at least they're fun.
Yeah.
In this movie, like, I've never been so bored in a movie that has comic book movie in the genre. Like,
I mean,
I've never wanted to leave.
During Zack Snyder comic films.
But even Zack Snyder's, like, they're visually appealing, so at least you can, like, appreciate that at the bare minimum. But, like, this doesn't have good CGI. It doesn't have good acting. It has terrible blue screen. It looks like it was shot in a cupboard.
Well, I think a lot of what these movies, especially like Madam Web, the Sony ones in particular, I think a lot of what they're missing is like there's no underlying motive, and this is hard to describe for people who aren't really into watching live theater. Not that live theater is like above film in any way. Like, there's challenges to each, but like when you're writing something that people are going to consume, like imagine that any of these movies had to be executed live in front of an audience, right? Your conviction to the line, the writing, not only the conviction to the writing, the underlying motives that people have, the driving force for why they say and do things has to exist for every single moment, or else people are going to walk away highlighting where it didn't come through, right? Like, that's how acting works, is you have an underlying motive for everything, even comedy, right? So the underlying motive is still there. Like, you have a real emotion that drives a comedic moment that subverts your expectation for what was going to happen. So, like, in these movies, and very particularly the Sony ones, like, look at X-Men Apocalypse, look at like any of the X-Men movies, really. I think a lot of them are missing. They're missing that motive. And even Hugh Jackman, like, I know we all loved him as Wolverine, but back then, like, movies were more campy, but also comic books are fucking campy, so that's fine. But like, they're always saying cheesy shit in comic books. I've read comic books recently. They say cheesy shit. It happens.
Yeah.
That's part of that medium. That's part of what makes it enjoyable, but like, now that we've raised the bar for how drama is encapsulated, portrayed, and conveyed in the visual realm, in like the film and TV realm, you have to keep reaching for that bar, and if you're not reaching for it, if you don't have that underlying motive, like if we don't believe that person is doing something that's of importance to them, like in that moment, and if it's not believable, if it doesn't come across as authentic, even with suspended disbelief, we walk away going, wow, that wasn't as good as I thought it could be, and like some people have a hard time describing why things aren't good, so they just call it bad, right? Like I think a lot of people might see this movie and just go, oh, it was bad, but it's because like, yeah, is everybody going to sit around and like study acting techniques and writing techniques and understand like the mechanisms that make these stories function? No. So it's okay that people just call them bad, but I think this is why these things are bad. Like the writers are missing the mark on having motive, which gives the actors less to work with to begin with. Like imagine showing up to like cook a meal and someone's only gotten you 4 of the 10 ingredients that you need. You're like,
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta improvise 6 of these ingredients? I guess I'll do my best.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, to your point about like not blaming the actors, I mean, I don't like Sydney Sweeney for a variety of reasons. I just
You're
don't.
so sexist this week, Odie.
Yeah, I guess so. She literally, okay.
Why do you hate all these madams?
I'm going to say this right now. Sydney Sweeney at the peak of Euphoria fame when she was making over $300K a season, which is, if you made $300K for working for 6 months, you'd probably be pretty happy.
Yeah.
She literally said at peak Euphoria fame, she was in an interview, she was like, yeah, it's just really upsetting because like I'm still working so much that I can't afford to take like 6 months off and have a vacation in Italy. You mean like every other normal person who works a job?
Yeah.
You entitled? Entitlement.
Okay.
Do not like it.
All right. That's fine.
Yeah. And she's just,
I mean, if I had $300K and I didn't have enough time to take a vacation, I'd probably be frustrated too.
No, it's not because she doesn't have enough time.
Yeah,
it's because she didn't think that she was making enough money, but
I think she was saying she didn't have enough time because she's filming so much.
No, it was because of money.
Because of money? Are you sure?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Positive. Because there was a whole thing about she was upset that Zendaya was making so much more money than her like per episode. But it's Zendaya, dude. Like, what do you mean?
I don't know.
Like, Zendaya has been in Marvel and she's in Dune.
Yep.
She's an incredible actress. And like, no offense, Sydney Sweeney, but like at that time you'd only been in Euphoria. You're only known for Euphoria.
Yeah, she was good in White Lotus too, though. That was good.
Maybe it's just because everybody that was in Madam Web now I'm like, fuck you, I hate you. But like,
well, don't blame the actors, Odie.
No, too late. But yeah, no, like Dakota Johnson literally in press conferences for this movie has been like, yeah, I don't know if this movie's good. I haven't even seen it. I don't know if I will see it.
Yeah, that's
so
not a good vote of confidence.
Yeah.
When your lead
anyways,
is like, yeah, I don't know how this movie is. We'll see. We're really taking a swing on this. Well, I'm so glad that I got to listen to how bad Madam Web was twice on this podcast.
You're welcome.
I honestly, I wasn't going to see it anyway. When you told me that it was coming out, I was like, I had no idea. I was
texting you during the movie,
The only movie I have paid attention to so far this year is Dune Part 2. Oh, and I have tickets to go see Demon Slayer in theaters next weekend. That's it.
I will also be able to talk about the other Spum movie coming out this year.
What is that?
Craven later this year.
Oh, I will go
Craven
see
the
that
Hunter.
one. Yeah, let me know when that one comes out. I'll go see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was texting you during Madam Web.
I know.
And I was dying.
I know.
I was dying.
I know you were.
Yeah,
Where was I?
And I even texted you.
Was this last night? No, this was a few days
Wednesday.
ago. Where was
I even texted you.
I forget where I was, but I was like, oh, damn, Odie's having a rough time. I think I was at the gym.
Probably, because I texted you and Goose, and I was like, whoever made this movie needs to be shot.
Yes. All right. What's your jam this week? Let's talk about good things.
Yes. Okay, so I watched a movie after Madam Web to cleanse my palate. I watched 2.
Okay.
The first one, I watched Mad Max Fury Road again. I wanted to see... I've only seen that movie, to my recollection, like once or twice. Have you seen Fury Road?
Phenomenal movie.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say.
One of my favorites.
It's my favorite Tom Hardy performance by far.
Really?
I love him in this movie. Yeah, I really like the first 3 Mad Maxes with Mel Gibson, and I really like Tom Hardy's portrayal of Mad Max. I like the fact that he talks in this like low, almost like grunty voice the entire time. He doesn't have a lot to say, and he's just kind of like at first he's very untrusting of everybody, and then by the end he's just like, yeah, we're all pals.
He's
we're
like a
buds.
silent protagonist.
Yeah. So phenomenal. I also with the Mad Max prequel Furiosa coming out in a couple months, I wanted to see this again. But the other movie that I watched that might be a little lesser known. Have you heard of the Guy Ritchie film Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre? Ruse de Guerre? Ruse de Guerre?
Ruse de Guerre.
Ruse de Guerre.
No.
So this is a.
You told me about
Jason's...
this one. We've talked about this on the podcast before, so I've heard about it. I haven't seen it.
So this is the Jason Statham, Aubrey Plaza, Carrie Ells, Hugh Grant, Josh Hartnett, Guy Ritchie movie. And look, if you like fun, silly spy movies, if you like when Jason Statham is a little bit more comedic, like in the movie Spy with Melissa McCarthy, if you like Aubrey Plaza at all, if you want to see Hugh Grant being weird, this was a fun. It's a fun movie.
I love that Hugh Grant just gets to keep playing weird roles now. Like I just love like all the playing
Oompa
Ford
Loompa.
in Dungeons and Dragons, like his weird creepy sexual guy in The Gentleman, and it sounds in this movie as well. Here's what I will highlight: Jason Statham is not funny in The Spy. He's hyper serious, and everyone else around him is comedic, which makes his performance funny.
Okay, that's
he's
a good
playing
point.
the same character he plays in every film, which is the serious, gritty voiced action guy, and then everything else that's happening around him is funny, which makes the performance funny. It's not that he's a set piece that is to highlight the humor.
When he's telling Melissa McCarthy, and he's like, I ripped this arm off and beat a man to death and then sewed it back on. Like when he's going through all that stuff, like, I mean, props to Jason Statham for being funny, whether he meant to or not.
The delivery is good because he keeps he's
playing
the same character.
It's the same thing in this movie as well, but it's available to rent for like $3 on Amazon, and it's a good time. I honestly I enjoy it.
Cool.
So.
That's good. Anything else? No, those two.
Those two, and then don't watch Madam Web.
Don't watch Madam Web, baby.
Don't watch
All right, that's the message of this podcast. Were these spoilers or were these warnings? All right, I got a couple jams for you.
You decide.
I finished Mr. and Mrs. Smith this week, which was amazing. Actually,
how was it?
Phenomenal. It was really good. I think anybody shitting on that show, fuck off. That show's amazing. It's not what you expected it to be. If you went in thinking this is Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie but played by two different people, no, it's not. It's a show that's very much about relationships. It's about relationships and how we approach them and different things, like how we deal with jealousy, how we process our own trauma as we bring them into relationships as adults. Like, it's about really, really deep things without getting too nail on the head with it, which fucking applause to Donald Glover for that. Good job. You nailed it by not nailing it. They don't have like these overt conversations. Well, that's why I have trauma and blah, 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 blah. Like, there's none of that shit. It's like, it's two people that are actually working out their shit, keeping secrets from each other, trying to find their way in life. They're obviously two very different people, but they end up finding an attraction for each other. I could not recommend it more. It actually ends really well. There's a really funny, awesome reveal / moment with Paul Dano's character that like is maybe not what you would expect. Like, just really, really good. They even going back to what you and I were talking about, they even meet another Mr. and Mrs. Smith in the series, which is good. In episode 4, I think it's episode 4, they meet another Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And then that other Mr. and Mrs. Smith come back later. Like, just really, really good shit. Like, I cannot recommend it enough. I don't want to give too much away because it really is good. Like I said, it's about relationships first. So there's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of like what I would call low stakes moments in it where like, you know, the only stakes are their own feelings, right? But then the way that they transition into the proper espionage action of a Mr. and Mrs. Smith thing is really, really good. The interaction between the two characters is amazing. Like I
need to finish.
I think they did a really great job with that show through and through. And then I don't know if you know this about me, Odie, but I have a slight obsession with Norwegian R&B and pop stars. And continuing with that, my boy Ramon, who is a Norwegian pop star, has begun rolling out his second album. I don't know what the album's going to be called yet, but just singles have been coming out, because you know how people do things now. Like on Spotify, you release a single, then you release the next single, but in that single, because it's a separate release, you treat it like a single/album, and it has the single and the previous single that you released, and you just keep building on that until eventually you just release the whole album. So then there's like 5 different versions of the album that have come out, but you've gotten extra streams on every single song. Yeah. So anyway, so that's how people release shit now, and he's been building out the album. And last week, it's called Ingen har sett eller hört, came out, and that is a beautiful, beautiful song. And that really got me listening to it. There's another song right after that on the single called Bli. There's obviously it's all in Norwegian, so if you don't like listening to music that's in another language, skip it. Feel free. You may not enjoy it, but I actually, the thing that I really, really, really like about listening to music in another language, because this started for me probably like 2017. I was listening to a lot of Lido. Lido's from Norway. He has a couple songs that he did with at the time, Unge Ferrari, who now goes by Stig Brenner. But so Stig Brenner, Unge Ferrari at the time, I'm listening to a lot of tracks by Lido and them. And then the Stig Brenner, Unge Ferrari, released his own album that got recommended to me through the old algorithm on Spotify. And then I followed that down like a little Norwegian rabbit hole, and I started finding like Arif Murakami and all of these awesome other Norwegian artists that I could listen to. And so I just kind of started like incorporating that into my weekly listen. Like it's not the only thing I listen to. I still listen to a lot of music in English, but through listening to it and hearing their voices and just the way that things get vocalized and the way that emotions are translated, it's very, very similar. Music really is like a universal language. And like when a song is sad, you can tell that it's sad. It doesn't matter if it's in English or not. When a song is like loving and longing, you can tell that it's loving and longing. It doesn't matter if it's in English or not. You know, like there's these
I totally agree.
Yeah, there's these underlying premises, themes, motifs that exist in music that allow you to still have a similar experience regardless of the language. And for me, Norwegian is just such a beautiful language to listen to. I love a lot of the tracks on it. It's called like White Dove's Black Magic, by Unge Ferrari, Stig Brenner. That's like a weird thing. He changed his name to Stig Brenner on that album, so he kind of like released it under both names, but now is only going by Stig Brenner. He actually does a really great cover of I Fall Apart by Post Malone. Beautiful.
Oh
yeah. Amazing. But yeah, so Ramon had an album come out a couple years ago that I really loved, and then this new one that's coming out, it's kind of along the same lines. Like I just love that, like there's an extra emotion to some of these songs that I don't feel like we get in a lot of Western pop and R&B. So I've really, really, really been enjoying that.
Nice.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously, since you are sexist and you hate all the actors in the Madam Web film.
No.
Who would you recast and why are they all men in the Madam Web film?
The thing is, no, Kevin, no. You know what? No, I'm not falling.
You're not going to do it? You're not going to recast Madam Web?
I think that there are genuinely good actresses that could have done a better job. Or, I don't know, maybe just don't write a story with 3 Spider Women that aren't actually Spider Women because you never see them as Spider Women.
Well, what do you think? I feel like honestly, like they got to the day that they were filming and they were ready and they're like, all right, what's our VFX budget? And someone went, what? And they were like,
what
our
budget?
VFX budget. And they were like, well, we don't have one, bro. No, we never filed for that with the corporation. They said, nah, we gotta film this. They said, just bring in some hot chicks. Like, we're just filming hot chicks, right? This is Spider-Girl's gone wild, right? Is that what we're doing?
No. God, no.
That's not what you want, Odie.
No. I want a good story with good acting and good character development and good character arcs and a compelling narrative. Things that this movie did not offer. And maybe maybe with a better script and a better director, maybe I wouldn't have hated Sydney Sweeney so much.
Yeah.
But you know what? I doubt it because I saw her rom-com with Glenn Powell.
Uh-huh.
Bad.
Some people
didn't like
Some
it.
people are just popular actors and actresses even though they aren't that good. Like that also exists. That's totally fine.
100%.
Yeah. Like that's okay. Yeah. Like that's where Robert Downey Jr. was for a while. Like he went through a rough patch, you know? Like I don't know if you remember, but like when Iron Man came out, I was like, "Oh, that's Robert Downey Jr. from Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the movie with Val Kilmer." Like that's what I knew him from at that point. I was like, "That was a good film. I'll watch him as Iron Man. Great."
Yeah.
You know? That kind of shit happens all the fucking time. But who would you cast in which role from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia for the Madam Web movie that we all need?
Oh, okay, easy. I would do because I'm gonna go for what I think would be the funniest.
Yeah, do it right now.
Charlie Day would be Madam Web.
Perfect.
Because he's
psychotic,
so dumb.
Yep.
Yeah, he's psychotic.
Okay, good. Who are the three Spider Women?
Mac would be Sydney Sweeney's.
Okay, perfect.
I would have Danny DeVito be Isabel Merced's, and I would have Glenn Howerton be the third one, who's I don't remember what her name was, and then I would have
that means
Deandra.
Sweet D is the evil Spider-Man.
Sweet D is evil Spider-Man.
She's all pissed.
And Cricket would be Ben Parker.
Perfect. I love it. That's how we need to do this shit.
What is Sweet D's friend who has got a weird Artemis? Artemis would be Mary Parker.
Perfect.
Peter Parker's mom.
Oh my god, I would love that.
That would be great.
She just comes out. She's like, I just feel like a Cobb salad.
And I gotta give birth to this kid. There is literally. I want to end on this.
Yeah.
There is a moment in this movie.
I'm gonna end on this, whether or not it's funny. Go.
It's not okay. Where Madam Web is sitting with they're at the baby shower for Mary Parker's baby, and Madam Web's like, "Oh, what's the baby's name?" And she's like, "Oh, we're gonna play a game to guess. Like everybody guess what the name of the baby's gonna be." And somebody goes, "Okay. Is it gonna be Ben Jr.? You mean her brother-in-law's name?" And then she's about to go Peter, but she goes. And then a balloon pops, and they all go, "Huh!" And then they're like, "Oh, we gotta go. We gotta go save people. Come on!" So you never Peter Parker's name.
Wait, a balloon pops, and then they have to go save people?
Yeah, Madam Web. Ben Parker comes in. He's like, "Hey, Madam Web, we're paramedics, and there's a fire, and they need every paramedic in New York City. Let's go, baby."
This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
Yeah,
it's so who. We're gonna write this amazing Madam Web score, but we gotta we really like there's a moment where the action falls and we kind of hit a lull, and we're gonna have a baby shower for Peter Parker.
We're gonna hit towards Peter Parker, the good Spider-Man.
What the fuck?
And then they go like this, and then as they're going out the door, she goes, "Whoop,
whoop, whoop." Madam Web 2, the whoop continues. Whoop.
It's whooping time.
It's whooping time. Oh, that's what it should have been. It's whooping time. And then I hope in all the sequels just signs are falling on people. That's how this really works out. It turns out Madam Web's superpower is just being near large unnecessary objects. That not only can crush villains, but can also garner more funding for the next film.
Yeah, Coca-Cola's next up.
Google Apple Prime sign just falls over on the next villain. They just continually just like that's what's up. Yep. Perfect. Whoop.